After promising a national food plan during last year's election, this week the federal government gave a glimpse of what might be in it with the release of an issues paper. And there are a lot of issues to consider when trying to work out how to double food production by 2050 to meet global demands while protecting fragile resources. International and local experts say Australia could be a leader in securing global food supplies by exporting its farming and agricultural science smarts as well as its produce. But there are also warnings that the country is not immune from a global food crisis and the instability that comes with it. Kerry State filed this special report.
In the next 40 years, we have to produce as much food as the world has produced in the last 500 years.
You can work out in the back of an envelope that we're not going to have enough food in 20 years' time by far.
We're running out of water, we're running out of oil, we're running out of agricultural science and technology, we're running out of fish, we're running out of stable climates. So all of those things playing together are creating greater insecurity in the world's food supply at a time when demand is poised to double.
Baby spinners and salad mix. All $2 here, guys. You want some?
Faced with such abundance and variety, serious food shortages may seem unlikely to many shoppers in Australia.
South Australia.
But a growing chorus of experts say it's a crisis that is real and, if ignored, far-reaching.
Our level of certainty over food security is that we are in trouble and we need to do something about it now.
It's a challenge that has confronted food producers before.
Those who now say that food is not the problem, I say it will be a continuing problem.
In the 60s and 70s, the so-called Green Revolution, led by plant scientist Norman Borlaug, more than doubled agricultural outputs by using more water, fertiliser, pesticides and higher-yielding crop varieties. It helped feed the world for 40 years and reduced poverty, but it also took a toll on the resources we rely on for food.
So we do need another revolution, but it cannot be in the same vein as in the past. It has to be a revolution built on resource use efficiency, using our resources much more efficiently, but still have the production increases needed to meet the demand.
So what is Australia's role in this greener green revolution?
Australia never has been and never will be a food basket or a food bowl of the world. The reality is that we produce food for 60 million people, we feed 22 million odd at home and 40 million overseas. But put in a global context, that 40 million that we feed overseas represents less than 3% of global food movements. How Australia contributes to food security globally is through knowledge, training and technology transfer.
We're very good at farming. We're very, very good at food production. We have better knowledge about how to handle difficult climates, droughts and floods and things like that than almost anyone else in the world. And in a time of climate change, that's exactly the kind of knowledge that you need.
In this high-tech plant breeding centre in Adelaide, the search is on for hardy crops that will produce more from less to feed a world population that's predicted to rise by more than 2 billion by 2050.
It is a bit nerve-wracking, genuinely. Over the last 50 years, we've increased the amount of food produced on the planet by 32 million tonnes a year. We have to increase that rate of increase, if you're still with me, from 32 to 44 million tonnes a year.
With a name like Plant Accelerator, this facility sounds like a promising place to begin.
We're able to do things that haven't been possible before.
It doesn't make the crops grow any quicker or bigger, but scientist Mark Tester says the information collected here will speed up the breeding process.
To be able to use digital imaging technologies, computer technologies and robotics to look at how plants grow. That's completely new. We used to use rulers and not much more, maybe weigh a plant and destroy it in the process of studying it. Here we can non-destructively watch plants grow and die and how that's affected by the environment and their genetic makeup.
The professor and his colleagues are trying to create plants that are drought-resistant, salt-tolerant, or use nitrogen more efficiently. Scientists have been tweaking crops for years and years and years. Is there a limit to how much you can do to these crops? Are we reaching that ceiling?
I think there is a limit. There's a limit to only how much light those plants can absorb and convert it to starch in their grain. But I think we're still a long way from that limit.
The centre's using both conventional breeding and the more contentious genetic engineering to push those boundaries.
We've had the tools of education and improving agricultural systems and improving conventional breeding. We've been throwing those tools at the problem very well for the last 50 years, and we are falling short, and we're predicted to fall short seriously. So for me, I think we need to bring in new technologies.
This manual harvest may not look particularly high-tech, but this is the breeding centre's first field trial of GM wheat, a big-ticket item for many plant scientists. While the experiments will continue for several years before any commercial release, Professor Tester believes this sort of painstaking work will lead to big gains in grain in the long term.
Conventional breeding, it will improve things by maybe 1% or a bit less than 1% a year. So that's great. But if we can then, on top of that, add a 10% increase every so often, then that's a good contribution from GM.
However, any contribution by GM to global food security will probably be challenged for some time, as debate continues over the benefits and risks.
There isn't any evidence at the moment that GM has lifted world food production as such. It has produced some agronomic advantages in a number of countries. In reality, GM food probably offers benefits to all kinds of farmers, but clearly consumers have to accept that the food is safe and healthy before they're going to eat it.
There is no magic bullet in this business. So you have to combine the potential of high-yielding, resilient crop varieties through science, and biotechnology is one of those, and improve farming systems.
When it comes to improving farming systems, Mark Branson is an early adopter. The South Australian grain and wool producer has been into precision agriculture and other efficient farming technology for more than a decade at Stockport, north of Adelaide. Instead of treating the whole farm the same way, he changes seeding rates and the amount of inputs he applies to suit the soil.
If the world resources of fertiliser and chemicals is going to decrease, the only way we're going to increase our output, i.e. better yield, is to apply it to areas that actually need it and are going to use it the best.
While some of the technology involved in precision agriculture has taken off, like yield mapping, working out what to do with the information is a complicated business that puts some farmers off.
I'd probably spend almost up to a week sitting and analysing, cleaning up the data, analysing it and then turning it into a variable rate map. But I've seen the benefits, so I don't mind doing that. My water use efficiency has gone up and is continually going up. And last year we had a belter and my yields were a lot better than a lot of other people in the district.
I think by reversing some of the soil degradation that has already occurred and putting carbon into soil, we could easily achieve the kinds of gains that have been achieved through plant breeding. So we're talking 10-15% increases in yield.
Just like plant science, studying soil has become a sophisticated affair. But Professor John Crawford says when it comes to finding solutions to food shortages, not enough people are looking below the surface.
I think people don't find soil particularly interesting. We forget, I think, that soil is the basis of human health. There is no alternative to soil. It's not like alternative energies. There are no alternative soils.
The Sydney University scientist says Australian farming land has lost too much topsoil and 70% of its carbon over the last couple of centuries. And other nations like China have fared worse.
If you do a very rough calculation about the rate that we're losing soil and how much we've got and how quickly it's being replaced by natural processes, it turns out that we'll probably run out of soil within a couple of generations unless we do something about it now. OK, so this is the computer now reconstructing...
He's working with farmers in Australia to try and rebuild soil so it holds more water and oxygen and recycles nutrients to plants better.
Most of the pastures in Australia are going to look much more like this, and we want to get them to look much more like that.
And is that
the connection between the science and the farming isn't happening, and more importantly, I think the connection between farming and the science isn't happening. There's an opportunity for two-way exchange of knowledge that I think would speed up the process of innovation in this whole area significantly.
This project in Queensland is part of another two-way exchange aimed at securing food supplies. Researchers in Australia and Africa are trying to improve soil, yields and returns on small farms in developing nations, where access to fertiliser is often limited.
1, 2, 3, 5, 8.
The strategy is to grow more during the wetter part of the year and combine the staple crop maize with a soil-enriching legume.
Queensland has very close similarities in terms of agroecologies and soil types and rainfall environments to many places in Eastern Africa. And many of the problems are very similar. The main difference probably is that they get more rain than us and they produce less crops. So there is a huge potential for improvement from learning how we can adapt our technologies to an African environment.
The use of modern techniques, of fertilizer, of improved seed varieties, of better use of irrigation water, is so low. It's about 1/10 the potential. So here we have great potential of increasing yield 3 times, 4 times in Sub-Saharan Africa with minimum investments.
While Australian properties have got bigger, 500 million farmers, mainly in developing nations in Africa and Asia, only have a small plot of land. These plots feed a third of the global population. So, to avert a food crisis, experts say developed nations must help small farms become profitable as well as productive.
I think too many a time we ask farmers to produce more food, we give them new